This video is an accompaniment to the 6 C's of Becoming an Advocate Toolkit, a collaborative project of the Survivor Alliance, the International Institute of Buffalo, and Freedom Network USA. The goal of this collaboration is to support human trafficking survivors decide how or if they want to be involved in the anti-trafficking movement. This video features seasoned survivor leaders from across the United States as they share details about the work they do and the lessons they have learned along the way.
Hi, my name is Savannah Sanders. I'm in Sedona, Arizona, and I am the Director of Consulting for Survivor Alliance.
My name is Holly Austin Gibbs, and I currently live in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm a survivor of sex trafficking. I've published a book that includes my personal story, and I now oversee a program to address violence and human trafficking for a national healthcare system.
My name is Suleiman Masood. I'm from Vacaville, California, and I serve as a subject matter expert on labor trafficking.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Chumbo. I live in Laurel, Maryland. I'm a survivor activist for anti-human trafficking. I have been a survivor for about going on 12 years now.
Hi, my name is Jess Torres. I live in Los Angeles, California. My pronouns are they, them, and I am a community organizer.
My name is Ima Matul and I live in Los Angeles, California. I'm a survivor advocate. I used to manage survivor leadership program and coordinate survivor group here locally in Los Angeles and nationally.
Hi, I'm Shamir McKenzie and I'm in Maryland. I get to work with survivors who have just been extracted from their situation and provide them with a pathway of hope.
My role in the anti-trafficking movement has been a lot of different things. I'm a social worker. I focus on different aspects of consulting around prevention and aftercare services and have done a lot of direct services, mentoring, and trauma healing with survivors of exploitation.
I'm the Director of Common Spirit Health's Violence and Human Trafficking Response Program. Common Spirit is a national healthcare system comprised of 2 member organizations called CHI and Dignity Health. I oversee efforts to educate and equip physicians, nurses, and other healthcare professionals on how to identify patients who may be impacted by violence, such as human trafficking, and how to provide trauma-informed victim assistance.
Within the human trafficking movement, I view myself as a bridge builder between service providers and government entities. For the last 6 years, I have worked within the human trafficking movement to advocate for vulnerable populations, namely survivors of labor trafficking and male-identified survivors. This advocacy has allowed me to work directly with local, state, and federal agencies to build toolkits on prevention and service provision. As far as where I see myself going, I hope to serve as a prosecutor and be in a position where I can serve survivors of trafficking and protect the community at large.
My areas of focus within the anti-trafficking movement are situated within community development and policy advocacy. Another large piece of the work I currently do is related to leadership development, which begins with, in the context of a relationship, it honors people's values, ethics, their long-term goals. It assesses a person's needs, their motivations, and it provides the space to heal and to dream.
I serve as the CEO for the Sungate Foundation, and Sungate exists to provide educational opportunities to survivors of all forms of human trafficking. And that educational opportunity can look like textbook scholarships. It could look like tuition scholarship. Sungate believes that education is an avenue of hope for survivors.
So then I decided I wanted to join the anti-trafficking field full-time, but I wasn't sure where I would fit in or how I could contribute. I wasn't a social worker, I wasn't a lawyer, I didn't have experience working with people who were being exploited. My background was science, and my experience in the anti-trafficking field was educating law enforcement officers, legislators, and social service providers about human trafficking and how to care for victims and survivors. So then I thought back on my own experience and remembered that healthcare had played a big role in my aftercare. Yet it was clear to me then and now that the health professionals in my aftercare, they didn't understand what I had been through, and they didn't know how to talk to me or how to help me. In fact, many of them further traumatized me and reinforced my feelings of shame and blame. So I Googled human trafficking in healthcare and discovered Dignity Health's Human Trafficking Response Program, which had just been launched. I reached out, and within weeks, I was driving across the country to lead this wonderful program.
Opportunities to work within the trafficking movement comprised of trial and error and a great deal of patience. It is through these two factors that allowed me to network with local agencies in Fresno, California, and eventually propel myself to serve on the United States Advisory Council on Human Trafficking, where I now provide recommendations to the President's Interagency Task Force.
I think it stems way back to my 18-year-old self. I had some court-mandated community service hours to handle, and they basically told me to pick from the options they provided on a list. And I ended up putting a significant amount of hours into an environmental nonprofit in New York City that focused on food justice, which was something I had no understanding of whatsoever. I truly received a political education for the first time in my life, and it helped me put my own life circumstances and those in my community into context. And this exposure and this education really provided the foundation for the anti-oppression work I continue to do today. And these folks also connected me to an anti-trafficking nonprofit that provided social and legal services. I later graduated from that program and became a mentor, which consisted of peer-to-peer empowerment and also advocacy. So it was my initial introduction to educating people about the topic of human trafficking through that social justice framework.
So how did I start in this work? Kevin Bales, who had wrote about me in his book, The Slave Next Door, introduced me to this movement. He told me I had a story. He told me I had a lot to contribute to this movement. And I really thought he was crazy. I thought this man had horns coming out of the head, because who wanted to hear about my story? Who wanted to hear about my experience?
I suspect that you might hear a lot of answers to this question, and I agree with all of them. When I first learned about human trafficking, and I learned about all the anti-trafficking efforts going on across the country, and I met other survivors leading some of those efforts, I felt very compelled to share my story. Sharing my story on stage and writing my story in a book helped me to connect the dots. It helped me to understand all the situations in my childhood that caused me to be vulnerable to a trafficker's tactics. It helped me to shed the shame and blame that I'd been carrying for years. Sharing my story and presenting on the topic of human trafficking helped me to become an expert on my own story and a subject matter expert in the field. Sharing my story helped me to become the person I am today, both personally and professionally. But that was my journey. It isn't meant to be part of everyone's journey to share their story publicly. You have to decide what's right for you, for your physical and mental health and well-being. It's okay to share your story if it's on your terms to further your goals.
In my culture, honor plays a tremendous role in my day-to-day. It is often seen as shameful to discuss trauma, whether it being intergenerational or causal. With that being said, it is key for prospective advocates to understand that the value they bring to the table does not start and end with the telling of a story. Although your story has helped shape who you are and may even play a large role in your healing, your story should only serve as your purpose for why you do your work, and not how you can get a seat at the table.
That it's a journey. The movement has been growing for a while, and as it grows and changes and adapts, we as survivors have to do that same thing, and we do a lot of that by focusing on our own healing and our lanes of where we want to be in the movement, what we want to focus on. There's so many different areas to be able to be involved, and it's really important for us to know where our strengths are within us and what our goals are to create our change and our biggest impacts, and be able to focus on those areas.
The best advice that I received that I would like to pass on to future advocates is to know and understand the types of work and consultant requests that you receive. You have an experience that not a lot of people can understand, let alone empathize. This is what makes you valuable, and this is an experience that leaders across various disciplines will want to ask for your input. Your expertise and the insight you gain in this field is your credibility, and you should not let that be taken for granted.
I would share that survivor leadership is defined by you and you alone. Leadership can look and feel like so many different things. There's a lot of people who might want to dictate or prescribe what your social justice awakening should look like, but there's no right way to be a survivor, and there's no right way to be an advocate or an activist. We're so vastly different with distinct qualities and gifts. So you may fit in some place that I won't, and I will fit in some place that you won't. And that's how we complement one another's efforts and cross the finish line together.
I want to share that yes, if you decide that you want to be a survivor activist, it is great to have you, but the first and most important thing is, before you decide to be a survivor activist, take some time to work on your healing, and then go out there and let the world know about your story, because your story educates people about the issue.
And whenever you're meeting with them or in the meeting setting, they will only ask you to share your story but not your expertise. So there is pros and cons if you identify yourself as a survivor in this movement.
What I wish I would have known when I first got started was that I could experience a lot of trauma within the movement, dealing with different organizations that were re-exploiting me. I had no idea that any of that would happen, because I thought that they were there to help. And even with the well intentions, there was a lot of harm that came through my process of growing through the movement, growing up in the movement, I should say.
I know now I am not in this place in my life because of my story or my trauma narrative. I am here because of my brilliance. I am here because of my determination, my tenacity, my heart, my unyielding spirit. I am not doing movement work because I'm a survivor.
I wish I took some time to work on my healing. Because, if you see a lot of my videos, I was still in pain. If you see me sharing my story, even though, yes, sharing my story around the world helped me to heal, was kind of like a therapist for me. But I wish I took some time out to just work on myself, get some counseling, work on my trauma. And the other important thing, I wish I knew that, that I'm supposed to be getting paid for me sharing my story, because I work in a law firm now, and I learned that us as speakers, as consultants, survivor activists, we're supposed to get paid for our time.
I don't always have to share my stories, because that's what people always expecting, that you just share your story. I wish that I did not do that in the beginning. I don't always have to say yes to everything whenever someone asking me to speak, whenever asking me to share my stories, because there are other survivors in this movement, that you're not the only one. I'm not the only one. So prioritize yourself, prioritize your self-care, and learn how to say no. Don't always say yes all the time.
The most important thing that I've learned as an advocate in the movement is that I needed to do my own work first so that I could pour into other people. Maybe doing my own work first is not the right way to describe exactly my journey, because I've done my work while doing the work in the movement, and as I've been able to do that, I've been able to get clearer and more concise with the things that I want to do and be able to really pour into people the way that I've wanted to. But a lot of that is doing my own work, my own trauma healing, my own self-growth, while being able to show up into the spaces that I want to show up into.
In my day-to-day work, I'm constantly having to juggle a healthy work-life balance. There are times where I'm put in unique situations where I have no idea how to handle it, and I may later view that as a personal success or a failure. The most important lesson I have learned is that imposter syndrome is a very real thing, especially for those with a lived experience that are pushing this movement forward. Although I'm continuing to hold space for learning and being patient with myself, I've learned that the best thing to do is just to be kind to yourself. There are maybe those in your support group who will never fully comprehend what you're going through and what you're dealing with, but you. No matter what your purpose is in this movement, your presence is valuable.
Without survivor voices, there will not be great policies that can help the next victim. If you look at past history, like during slavery, if Harriet Tubman did not go out there to help other slaves escape and teach the world that, hey, I've been through this, the world would not know that she freed so many people.
So the most important lesson for me was that whenever I get invitation to speak from other organization or company, make sure that you research or find out about who they are, because they might not have the same value as you are. So always do a research. You have to prioritize yourself.
We hope you found something useful in the words of your peers as you embark on your journey of creating a world free from exploitation. We cannot wait to see what you accomplish. To learn more about this project or to find additional resources, visit survivoralliance.org.